Welcome everybody to the annual KeraClub event. It's the 7th year and we're very pleased to have you all here. I'd just like to let you know that we are recording the session so other people can benefit from it later. But firstly, I'd like to begin by the acknowledgement to country. So we acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which the SafeSite Institute is located. We pay our respects to the elders both past and present. Now, if you have any questions during the webinar, please pop them into the chat and we'll get to them in the Q&A section at the end. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Michelle Pritchard. She's been with us for a number of years at the KeraClub since the beginning, and she has a lived experience with keratoconus. She was diagnosed at age 16. And after many years of procedures, including 3 corneal transplants, graft rejection, becoming legally blind and regaining her sight, Michelle's become passionate about being able to support those who are experiencing a life with keratoconus. She's been involved, as I said, in the KeraClub since its inception. She's now based in the Netherlands, which makes it extra special that she's here tonight, where she's pursuing a lifelong dream, furthering her musical career, and has recently completed a Master of Music at the Royal Conservatory, The Hague, with cum laude distinction. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and welcome everybody to our 7th KeraClub event. It's been such a meaningful 7 years, 7 years where we've been face-to-face, online, and obviously this year we've decided to do the safe thing by socially distancing online. This is a KeraClub which is for patients with keratoconus and their families and carers. It brings us information, it helps us support each other, and we have some wonderful panelists here tonight who've given up their time to actually contribute to furthering our knowledge and to give us all support. I'd like to welcome, just in general, Professor Stephanie Watson, OAM. Thank you, Stephanie, for your introduction. Dr. Himal Kandal, Dr. Yogamba Ramaswamy, Larry Kornhauser, OAM, Narina Janian, Mark Kozak, and Justine McLaughlin. And each one of them will give their own perspective, some of them as specialists in the medical field, some of them as optometrists who, as keratoconic sufferers, we tend to have a lot to do with, and also from a patient perspective, because this is also incredibly important. We will learn about what's next for us as keratoconus patients living with keratoconus, and getting the most out of your contact lenses. SafeSite Keratoconus Registry, we'll hear further about that, and then there will be the questions and answers at the end. So I now have the pleasure to hand back to the wonderful Stephanie Watson, who has been such an inspiring light for all of us in this organisation. Stephanie Watson, OAM. Professor Stephanie Watson, OAM, is a corneal specialist known for her groundbreaking research in corneal therapies. She is head of the corneal unit at Sydney Eye Hospital, head of corneal research group at SafeSite Institute, and chair of Australian Vision Research Group at SafeSite Institute. And chair of Australian Vision Research. As you can tell, I've just got off an aeroplane. Previously known as the Ophthalmic Research Institute of Australia. She's also the Deputy Director of Industry, Innovation and Commercialisation, Sydney Nano Institute. As a corneal specialist, she's appointed at the Prince of Wales and Sydney Children's Hospitals. Professor Watson was the only Australian to make the power list of the top 100 women in ophthalmology in 2021. It's my pleasure to now hand over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Michelle. Now, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what we've been learning about corneal crosslinking from the SafeSite Keratoconus Registry. So with crosslinking, the topics I'll discuss is when patients might need to have crosslinking, what the crosslinking procedure does, and how safe it is. Now, last week in my clinic, I saw a range of patients with keratoconus. There was Don, Peggy, and Sally. And each of them had questions particularly about corneal cross-linking. So Sally wanted to know, is her keratoconus progressing? If it's progressing or getting worse, that's when we normally think about whether one should have cross-linking. And so we did a study where we looked at over 11,000 eyes to see, well, who's most likely to progress? And we included a large number of studies from across the globe, and all studies had to have at least 6 months of follow-up. We then looked at this data, and we found that basically if you had a steeper cornea, you were more likely to progress, and if you had a younger age, you were more likely to progress. But many of these studies were done before modern equipment, so they may not have related to what's happening today. Nonetheless, we got tweeted about on Twitter, our work. So we set up the Save Site Keratoconus registry. And the idea of this is normally when you go to see your clinician, they'll make notes in their own records, but those records never get to inform research or practice. And so with the registry, we take everyday information from the clinic and we then analyze it to find the answers to what's really going on with keratoconus and its care. Because randomized trials, which assess treatments, include very narrow ranges of patients and treatments. And registry is more like the real world, which is all those Mr. Men characters to the side. The registry is web-based, so anyone can use it. It's very efficient and has its own statistical software. We have about 91 users across the globe with over 36,000 visits from over 7,000 eyes now, and we collect a range of data. And what we found when we looked at our own data, we did find as well that age and steepness of the cornea both were risk factors for progression using modern equipment. In summary, if you're 21 years old, you're much more likely to progress than if you're 26. If your cornea is greater than 55 units, that's steep. And there's a couple of measures of your corneal shape which can tell us whether you might be getting worse. And we found that it can even occur within 12 months if you're young. So you might need to have visits more frequently, particularly under 21 years of age. And we now have an optometry module of the registry, which is also helping us to understand more about contact lens wear and what happens in the long term as well. So what we can say is, look, if you're young and you have steep corneas, it is likely your keratoconus may get worse, and this may happen within the year, but you're not going to lose your vision. We do have options. And so one of those, and the main option is corneal cross-linking, but then patients want to know, such as Peggy, well, what's it going to do to my cornea? Again, we're fortunate to have data from the registry to inform this, but just a little recap on the cornea. Well, the cornea is like a sandwich. It's got many layers, and the middle layer is layers of collagen, one across the top of the other. And in keratoconus, those layers slip on each other and the cornea changes shape. It's a bit like a sandwich without any toothpicks. And what cross-linking does is put the little toothpicks back into the sandwich to make it more stable. And using the registry, we've been able to collect a lot of data over the years on what happens to patients who've had corneal cross-linking, and clinicians have been able to look at the results of their cross-linking procedures using the registry and see how they're performing and how your treatments are going. And with the registry, patients can also see their treatment journey. And the clinicians can get CPD, so that's points for accreditation for them to maintain their license for using the registry. So it's an important tool. And what we found is that if you have cross-linking, after 5 years, there's further improvement in vision than at 1 year, further flattening of the cornea in that your cornea gets a better shape, and it stops slipping. Sorry, I've just got a hot pause there on the slide. Now, if you are having cross-linking, we have developed a brochure for cross-linking that explains what will happen to your cornea, and you can download it here for the Keratoconus Australia website. And if you're worried about whether you can have a corneal graft after cross-linking, yes, you can, but hopefully you won't need one. So what we can say is, look, cross-linking does seem to have a lasting effect, and we've even looked up to 10 years. Your vision and corneal shape can even improve further, even after a year after the procedure. And you may not need a transplant, but if you do, you can still have one. Now, lastly, what type of cross-linking should be performed? And we now have a fast way and a slow way, sort of the traditional and the accelerated. And both deliver the same amount of energy, but just at different time paces. And we've done the largest study in the world that's across a number of countries with many centres, looking at the real world outcomes of these different procedures. And we had a large number of patients, and we found that short and long cross-linking both have the same vision improvement, corneal flattening, and the same number of adverse events, which fortunately were low. But short cross-linking is going to be more convenient for you. We've also found that shorter riboflavin times can produce the same results as longer and have similar outcomes. So both short and long procedures are similarly effective. Adverse event prevalence is low, and accelerated may be recommended because it's more convenient. But is it safe? Don wanted to know, is it safe? Well, when we looked at adverse events, the number of adverse events is relatively low for a procedure. You'll see the main one is haze, but that generally resolves in most cases. And at 5 years, there's really very few long-term adverse events from cross-linking. It's clinically significant haze, as I mentioned, is very common, but it's even more common in those who are young, have steeper keratometry. And now that we know this, we can tailor post-op treatment if we see an at-risk patient. So in terms of safety, your cornea may get cloudy, but this usually resolves. Loss of vision is a risk, but is not common. And take care with hygiene afterwards, because you don't want an infection. We also used the registry to see the impact of COVID and noted that patients weren't seeking follow-up or treatments for keratoconus. So it's important, even in times, difficult times, that you continue to seek care and have your keratoconus reviewed. In summary, and this is a slide just to show the team of the registry who all put in many hours and expertise so we can provide this valuable resource to clinicians and patients. Thank you also to the researchers that work with the registries team. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Watson. Always very informative, and it's also something that I think is very relieving for us to know that there is a progress in solutions for us for the future, and for those that are possibly going to be diagnosed also in the future as well. Can I just add that if we could please use the Q&A section of Zoom to submit your questions, which will be addressed during the panel discussion at the end. I would now like to introduce Dr. Yagamba Ramaswamy. She's a senior lecturer in the School of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Sydney. She commenced her academic career as a Vice-Chancellor's Research Fellow at the University of New South Wales and was a recipient of NHMRC Peter Doherty Early Career Research Fellowship. She has more than 10 years of experience in the field of biomaterials and tissue engineering and has made significant contributions to this field relative to opportunities. Currently, her research is focused on utilising biomaterials and nanotechnology platforms to understand the role of physical cues on stem cells and cancer cells. Dr. Ramaswamy is the co-chair of the Nanobioengineering Cluster, Sydney NanoHealth at the University of Sydney. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, KeraClub, for inviting me for an interesting webinar here. Yeah. So thank you. There's a lot of medical investment into the medical research to overcome some of the drawbacks that we have currently and to improve the solutions and improve the quality of life. Okay, so there's been a surge in the market for regenerative medicine and nanobioengineering, trying to find solutions through cell-based therapies, use of synthetic material and tissue engineering sources. And it can be applicable to a number of applications, including ophthalmology. So when it comes to nanobioengineering, you're basically merging the principles of engineering and biology and work towards finding a solution using some of the materials, cell sources, or biological molecules to repair, regenerate, and restore a damaged tissue. And this can be applicable for a variety of tissues, including the ocular tissue. So there's a number of materials that can be explored based on the applications you're looking at. And the polymer is something that is very applicable to ocular tissues. And also we can use nanoparticles to deliver some of the molecules, drugs, or proteins. So we utilize cells, material, biomolecules to find these restoration or the repairing of the damage. And one such cell that is applicable in this situation is the stem cells, which is basically the cells that have this capacity to replicate itself and also to differentiate into or to become different type of cell. So they can become neural cell, they can become heart cell, they can become fat cell. So they are specialized cells and they play a very critical role in applications, including regenerative medicine and nanobioengineering. And as I said, we can use biomolecules such as collagen or the elastin that gives elasticity to your skin. And these biological molecules are the proteins can help in increasing the activity of the cells that you're using, or it can increase the use of these materials in combination of them. So these molecules or the material or the cells, they can either be worked with each other, or they can work all together, or they can be used as its own. Now, as I said, these molecules or the cells, stem cells, or the materials such as polymers can help in repairing of damaged tissues, including the ocular tissues, and can be applicable for various kinds of applications in ophthalmology. And one such thing, application that can be looked at is what we're talking about today is keratoconus, which is basically a progressive thinning and steeping of the cornea. And what happens is, as you can see here in this image, the cornea changes the shape and there can be a distortion of the image of the vision. So in case of a healthy patient, a healthy person, you can see that the cornea is transparent and clear, and you can also have a healthy conjunctiva. But in the case of a damaged tissue or a limbus, as you can see here, then you can have like the conjunctiva is covering up the cornea, or in case of when there is a total damage of it, then you can see that it completely engulfs it. So what happens here is the capacity of these stem cells that I've been talking about is damaged, and that is what can affect your vision in terms of both what we can see with keratoconus. So we do have some solutions that Stephanie was talking about earlier, and apart from, but every one has got some drawbacks. And the next advancement that we have to see here is how cell-based therapies of cornea, if we can consider it as a promising advanced therapy for corneal disease such as keratoconus. So that is the next advancement, and we can see how these can improve these solutions, the cell-based solutions, using cells, using materials, using biological components can improve the disease. So as you can see here, we're talking about repairing of the damaged tissues. So as Stephanie was pointing out, that there is this trauma, and under a damaged condition, this trauma is affected. So we want to use these materials, cells, and biological molecules, and then you can bring it up and see how you can deliver these stem cells, like you can improve the quality of the stem cells, and that can eventually help in thickening of these the cornea, which had in the damaged condition, it was thinned. So this is what we are looking at from a completely different perspective, such as using nanotechnology and biomedical engineering, using material sciences. So that there are a number of polymers can be used for these kind of applications from a research perspective. That is what is being investigated. And the best way to use these kind of polymers is use it in the form of a hydrogel, which is nothing but what you can see with a jelly that you make at home for the kids. So it's pretty much like that. And we can incorporate the cells inside this. We can incorporate those biological molecules. And this becomes a kind of a niche. And we can help these cells to grow in this niche and then use it for transplantation. And they will help in restoring of the damaged tissue. Now, we can use these materials and we can 3D print it. We can increase the number of cells. We can increase the quality of these cells because we are trying to basically mimic what is actually the stromal area. And we can use it from a scientific, from an engineering perspective, because technology is also required. So that's why it is important that we bring medicine, engineering, science together to find these innovative solutions from different perspectives that can improve the quality of life. So we're targeting using these technologies for cornea and keratoconus, and if the limbus is damaged because of any other reasons, including the burns that we see in the hospitals. So there's been some work done by Stephanie in this area where she had collected the limbal biopsies and incorporated with the contact lenses. And then you use these contact lenses with these biopsies and put it onto your cornea. And we can see that this has helped in increasing these stem cells. However, we need to go a step further and increase the number of these cells, which can have this significant effect in repairing the damage. So the feasible solutions that we talked about is use these polymers, use these particles, use these proteins, which can all come together and form this niche that can benefit these applications, which can then be looked at from an industry perspective, how they can improve or how they can take it into a translational state and improve the quality of life in the future. So we can, as I said, so this is how it normally looks like, where there is a polymer and you add the cells into these polymers. You add nanoparticles that can carry these proteins, so that forms a niche. And we can fabricate these materials. And this is how we can look at how these cells that we're trying to target to improve the quality of these cells in helping it to restore the damaged tissue there. So that's how we can improve these cells when bringing in technology and other disciplines into the field. So that is our approach to find these advances in this area. So we're bringing in nanobioengineering platforms, a multidisciplinary team. We're engaging with clinicians like Stephanie and biologists, and bringing in the industry partners to help this research progress and find innovative solutions. So we are looking at developing this field, finding the novel discoveries, improve in terms of cure, improve the health of indigenous community, reduce the chronic disease cost, and reduce the health burden. Engage with the industry to support this research, as well as translating our work, and also training the next generation of experts in such a multidisciplinary field. So tailoring this biomaterials for such applications, including the ocular disease, is what we are working out, and that's a good way to bring both the teams together. So I'd like to acknowledge my students who work with me and the other collaborators, and Stephanie for involving me in this wonderful research and being a good mentor. So really thank you, and thank you for listening, and thanks for having me here too.
Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy. It's also a big thank you to your multidisciplinary teams and to the collaborators who are working towards really improving our quality of life as keratoconic patients into the future. And I think this gives us a really good sense of how complex the human body is, and what you're up against as scientists trying to work out the best way forward. And it's such an enthusing it must be such an enthusing field, especially when you have these breakthroughs. We now would like to move on to our next speaker, who is Mark Kosek, who's an optometrist, who we have had the luxury of having a very wonderful talk from several years ago. Mark Kosek graduated from the University of New South Wales in 1996. He completed his Master of Optometry in 2002 and his Graduate Certificate of Ocular Therapeutics in 2012. Mark is a founding partner and the professional education officer of IQ Optometrists, who have a network of 47 practices Australia-wide. Mark has lectured extensively throughout Australia, New Zealand and Asia on contact lenses, dry eye and ocular diseases. Mark has a special interest in also keratology, meniscleral contact lenses, dry eye, ocular diseases and behavioural optometry. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. So the topic of my talk tonight is getting the most out of your contact lenses. It's not forwarding through. Okay. So what's the difference between the different types of contact lenses? So everybody would be familiar with hard contact lenses or corneal RGP. So basically these are contact lenses which are smaller and they actually rest on the cornea. As a lot of the attendees tonight might be able to attest, they can be quite uncomfortable, particularly when you actually start wearing them in initial stages, but often that discomfort will abate over time. Meniscleral lenses, on the other hand, are much larger contact lenses, and what they actually do is they vault the cornea, so they're not actually touching it. So the initial comfort with these does tend to be a lot better initially, and they also have advantages in terms of allergies and helping patients with dry eye as well. But they can actually be a little bit more challenging to fit and for patients to actually insert themselves. There are other different types of contact lenses as well. There are hybrid lenses, which are a combination of soft and hard lenses, but I'm just going to focus on these two tonight. Firstly, with regards to corneal RGPs, there are advantages and disadvantages to them. So the advantage is they are quite easy to insert and remove because they are smaller, and they can often give you good vision. A small corneal RGP actually presses on the cornea a little bit, which can actually decrease some of the irregularity of the cornea, which can actually give patients better vision. They tend to be a little bit more cost effective than the larger lenses, simply due to the fact that they're half the size. But there are disadvantages. For example, as a lot of people would realize, they're easy to dislodge from the eye. So you can be walking along and all of a sudden your small contact lens actually pops out of your eye. Initially, they can be uncomfortable. And for patients, this is the big #1 problem. So a lot of patients will find that they're intolerant of having a small contact lens in their eye. And this is one of the reasons why people actually give up wearing contact lenses. And also importantly, is the lenses can be very uncomfortable if you get a foreign body under them. So even a little piece of dirt that gets under your lens can actually be very irritable. Highly irregular corneas, such as patients with pellucid marginal degeneration, can also be harder to fit with these lenses. In terms of mini-scleral, so these are a larger lens. They're about 16.5 millimeters in diameter. The great advantage of these lenses, they give you excellent initial comfort, and they can be a great option for dry eye and allergies because they act as a sealed environment. So allergens from the air can't actually get under the lens into the tear film. So as a result, patients can often have much better relief of symptoms such as itchy eyes. The lenses also last a long time because they are quite thick and they're actually quite hard to break. So, I fit a lot of mini-scleral lenses and patients really don't break them very often. They're an excellent option for sports lovers because they're very hard to actually dislodge. I don't think I've ever had a case where a mini-scleral where a lens is actually dislodged from their eye. They also keep foreign bodies out, again, because they're a sealed environment. And they tend to be easy to fit irregular corneas. They're not easy to fit, but they're easy to fit onto patients with irregular corneas or highly keratoconic people. But they do have inherent disadvantages as well. So the #1 disadvantage from the patient's perspective is that they're harder to insert and remove simply due to the fact that they're larger. So if you have small eyes or small apertures, it can make it a bit more difficult to actually insert and remove these lenses. Because they're larger, they tend to be a bit more expensive. From a clinician's perspective, one of the disadvantages of mini-sclerals is sometimes the vision can be a little bit worse than what a corneal RGP because it's actually not changing the shape of the cornea. They may not be the best option for very thin or fragile corneas due to less oxygen availability. So patients with really severe keratoconus, I'm talking patients with corneal steepness of 80 diopters or more, these patients may not be the best candidates for mini-sclerals. There is some evidence that they could potentially increase the pressure of the eye, but that evidence is really debatable. Some studies suggest it could happen. Other studies suggest that there's no increase in the pressure at all. From my perspective, I haven't really found an increase in pressure when I've taken the lens out of the patient's eye. One of the important things from a patient's perspective is really perseverance. This is the #1 factor. So whenever a patient comes in, I really don't push any contact lenses on people because I really want to determine what their motivation's like. If someone's highly motivated, then they're going to be successful, whether it be a smaller lens or a larger lens. For a mini-scleral or lens where, as you can see in these images here, it can be quite tricky to actually insert the lenses. You often need these 2 little plungers. One helps you put the lens in, one helps you take it out. But if you're considering wearing contact lenses, this is the thing I'd like to reiterate, is just your perseverance and motivation is so important to being successful in this process. The third point to have a successful lens wearing experience is make sure you clean your lenses. Wash your hands before you handle the lenses because your hands are the greatest source of bacterial contamination. Make sure you clean your lenses after every day or every use. Replace the solution every day. Just don't put your contact lenses back in the same solution. It's like having a bath and jumping back in the same bath water that you had from the day before. Don't rinse your lenses or your case in water because water is not sterile. Water contains bacteria and parasites such as acanthamoeba, which will increase your risk of having an infection. You need to also clean your contact lenses, your contact lens case, because this is one of the greatest sources of contamination. So patients often neglect to clean their contact lens case. Bacteria from the contact lens case will adhere to your contact lens, and then you'll transfer that to your eye. So once you clean your contact lens case with contact lens cleaning solution, you rinse it with saline and then dry the case with a tissue. One really important rule is do not sleep in your lenses. So studies tend to suggest if you sleep in contact lenses, you're about 10 times more likely of having a severe infection of the eye. Now, a lot of infections of the eye can be quite benign, but some can be absolutely debilitating and can cause vision loss. Stephanie would have seen a lot of contact lens wearers over the years where they've actually lost vision due to microbial keratitis, due to patients sleeping in contact lenses or not cleaning the lenses properly. Point 5 is when you swim in your contact lenses, wear goggles to protect your eyes. It's similar to how, or the reason why we wear a swimming cap is to protect our ears from infection from the water. You also want to wear goggles to actually protect your eyes from the water. When you finish swimming, it's a good idea to actually clean your lenses. And I'd really encourage people to avoid unhygienic water systems such as rivers, public spas, or other unhygienic environments. It's really important to have regular tests. The thing I'd like to reiterate is rigid gas permeable or hard contact lenses are actually a very safe modality. They actually have less incidence of infection compared to soft contact lens wearers. So a soft contact lens wearer is more likely to actually get an eye infection. The optometrist or the ophthalmologist will be able to actually identify problems even before you're aware of symptoms. So we can often see early signs of potential infection or where a patient is not actually reacting very well to contact lens wear. I'm just going to finish off by going through a case study. So I last gave this talk in 2017, and Nadina actually came to this talk back then. She's had an interesting history. She had corneal grafts in the 1990s. As a child, she was actually a patient of Fred Hollow's. She was wearing soft contact lenses, and she came to see me after hearing me talk, and she was quite interested in wearing mini-scleral lenses. She was saying that she hated the vision with her soft contact lenses and her eyes were extremely irritated. She was actually having to use steroid eye drops every single day to manage her irritation. Her visual acuity with her contact lenses was actually relatively poor. She could pass a driver's license, but her right eye wasn't as good as the left. So I did a lens fitting with Nadina in December 2017. We fitted her with mini-scleral lenses. It took 3 pairs of lenses and 5 appointments to achieve the optimal fit and vision. And this is what I'd like to really reiterate as well. So a lot of the expense with regards to fitting contact lenses is not just the lenses themselves, but it's also the chair time. You know, fitting mini-sclerals or small RGPs, it's quite time it takes up a lot of time from the optometrist perspective as well. And, you know, Nadina wasn't particularly hard, but she still took a lot of time to actually perfect that fit for her. I saw her 6 months later. The visual acuity is very good. She was getting 6/6 or 20/20 vision in both eyes, and she could read N4 print up close. So if you think about newspaper print or the font on your phone, that's generally going to be about N10 or N12 type font, and Nadina could get all the way down to N4. So she was very happy with the vision and the comfort that she was getting. She was saying to me that the right eye tended to be a little bit more cloudy. She was getting a little bit more of a buildup of mucin. And the great thing was her corneal grafts remained clear. And that's one thing we've always got to be very mindful of. If someone's had a corneal graft, their corneas do tend to be a bit more fragile. So we don't want to introduce a contact lens, which is going to make that worse. But that wasn't the case with regards to Nadina. So a year later, December 2018, so she'd been wearing the lens for a year. She entered with an irritated eye. I noticed a little ulcer in her eye, which I believed was a viral infection of the eye or a herpetic infection, the same as the cold sore virus. I prescribed an antiviral ointment and it cleared up very quickly. She returned a month later. She actually had an inflamed right eyelid, which wasn't necessarily associated with wearing contacts, and I prescribed her a steroid ointment. So this indicates the importance of actually seeing your eye care practitioner regularly or whenever you're having some discomfort wearing your contact lenses. But by July 2019, her lenses were still performing well. Her grafts remained clear. And one thing she commented to me is that she hadn't used FML eye drops or the steroid eye drops since she began wearing mini-scleral. So they alleviated a lot of her issues in terms of dryness and allergic symptoms such as itchy eyes. Her visual acuity still remained good. It was a little bit down in the right eye compared to the left, and she could still see well up close. By March 2021, she returned again. So by this stage, she'd been wearing lenses for about getting close to 3.5 years. So it's the same pair of lenses. So, and that's the other thing, these lenses can actually last a long time without having to change them. She had an irritated left eye here. Again, I found a little small corneal lesion. And again, this was a presumed herpetic viral eye infection. And I simply just prescribed antiviral ointment and antibiotic drops as cover. By June 2021, she entered again. She'd been using saline to fill her lenses, which is not recommended because saline is very salty and the ocular surface doesn't like too much salt. What I recommend when you use mini-scleral lenses is actually fill your lenses up with a drop like sustained hydration, which contains hyaluronate. her visual acuity was still quite good. We actually ordered a new left lens, and we actually just changed the fit a little bit and flattened the edge. But she got 3.5 good years out of that lens, and she's still actually wearing the same lens in her right eye. So she's going strong. Towards the end of this year, it'll actually be 5 years that she's worn the right lens. So the points I'd like to really reiterate is that Nadine is a really good example of what we need to do to actually maximize success with contact lenses. So we need to fit the right type of lens, and not all optometrists can fit mini scleral contact lenses. So it's really about finding the right contact lens practitioner for you. You need to have regular follow-ups and use the recommended solutions and clean the lenses as recommended by your eye care practitioner. And the thing which is most important is contact lenses can really greatly improve your quality of life. And Nadina was going to someone who was quite miserable. Her eyes were irritating her every single day and making her quite miserable. And now she can actually enjoy life and see things clearly without having constant irritation. So I'd like to thank everybody for listening today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm somebody who's managed to have a really increased quality of life because of my scleral lenses over my corneal grafts, and after not driving for 13 years at night time, that's what that gave me. It gave me the freedom to drive at night time. So it takes patience, but it also takes a lot of expertise to fit these lenses. It's now my pleasure, though, to move on and to welcome Larry Kornhauser, OAM. Larry is, as I say every year, a complete inspiration. He was diagnosed with keratoconus at age 12 and received a corneal transplant at age 18. He went on to complete a Bachelor of Economics with honours and later completed a Diploma of French Language while living in France. He worked for over 35 years as an economic journalist, first at the Australian Financial Review and later in France, where he co-founded and edited an international newsletter for the energy sector. He also has worked as a translator for a range of international organisations and various economic journals. Since his return to Australia, he has also written articles on personal computing and done database development. In 1999, he helped create Keratoconus Australia and became its inaugural president, a position he still holds, and we all take our hat off to him. The amount of work that he does behind the scenes is just phenomenal. These days, he also manages his family business and investment interests. Larry has travelled extensively, played many sports, raised 3 children, and never let his keratoconus dictate what is possible. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Michelle. And welcome home. Yesterday, my daughter read me a book entitled No One Wants to Hug a Cactus. It was a charming story about how a grumpy but lonely cactus grows a beautiful flower to attract a passing tumbleweed, and how good it felt when they finally hugged. Strangely, that storyline pretty much summed up why we started Keratoconus Australia and what we do. I know that sounds crazy, but just hear me out. So let's wind back to 1999. A certain Professor Richard Voilet, a highly skilled and thoughtful contact lens fitter for keratoconus, was pretty pissed off with some of his colleagues who disparaged and shunned keratoconus patients because they allegedly took up too much chair time and had a so-called keratoconic personality. These optometrists claimed keratoconus patients were always complaining about their vision, their poor fitting contact lenses which kept popping out and got lost or broken and irritated their eyes. In short, they were difficult, stressed, anxious, and sometimes quite prickly. Based on his own experiences, Professor Voilet figured these patients had good cause for their dissatisfaction, given the often shabby treatment they received, their young age, and because they needed to wear hard contact lenses, which were difficult to get accustomed to and didn't resolve a lot of their vision issues. So he asked a group of his patients, including me, to consider launching a keratoconus patient support group. My own troubles with keratoconus really began after a corneal transplant at 18, but I'd always tried to hide them from others, including my family and even myself, I guess, so as to appear sort of normal. But listening to other people's stories of hardship arising from their failing vision convinced me we needed to do this. Keratoconus Australia was born in 2000 primarily to give support, metaphorical hugs if you prefer, to the young people with keratoconus who were struggling with their vision and consequently their studies, their work, their sports and leisure activities, their families and social and love lives. We felt we could talk to these people and talk them through their concerns and fears because everybody at Keratoconus Australia also has the disease. And while every keratoconus patient is different, we can all relate to the basic issues facing someone after diagnosis. We all know how scary it is to be entering adolescence with all its promise of freedom and fun, and then unexpectedly start to lose your sight, sometimes very quickly, to a disease that has no known cause or cure. Suddenly you're told you probably need to have your eyes zapped with ultraviolet light to stop further progression and maybe wear hard contact lenses for the rest of your life to see clearly again. Not glasses or soft lenses like your other short-sighted friends, but hard ones that can hurt and need constant maintenance and can be difficult to put in and take out. All of this is expensive, very expensive, and may cause financial hardship and stress within the family because keratoconus is not even recognised as a disease under the optometric Medicare schedule, and there are no rebates for the complex contact lenses generally required by keratoconus patients. These cost upwards of $1,000 or more each and need to be replaced regularly. Worse, although we have world-class contact lens fitters for keratoconus in Australia, there are few and far between, hard to find, and you may have to travel long distances to consult one, especially if you live outside a capital city. And then you'll need to make multiple visits to try and get your contact lenses just right. And so Keratoconus Australia set out to support keratoconus patients and try to change the way they're treated through advocacy on their behalf and facilitating research into the areas of most concern. Because even with the best intentions, busy clinicians simply don't have the time to answer all the questions, listen to all the complaints, and don't have the lived experience with keratoconus to understand it from the other side of the cornea. Today, we have almost 3,000 full members. All our services are free. We operate on goodwill and a tiny budget funded by a few donations and are managed by a volunteer committee, all of whom have keratoconus or are parents of children with keratoconus. That's unusual. A survey of international support groups done by the US National Keratoconus Foundation earlier this year showed that Keratoconus Australia was virtually the only fully patient-run group in the world. All the others, including the American Foundation, are offshoots of hospitals, medical centres or foundations, and generally run by people who don't have keratoconus. Since we started, the association has helped thousands of people traverse the various stages of keratoconus. First, the shock of the initial diagnosis, the search for clinicians experienced in treating the disease, then the decisions around corneal crosslinking, when to have it, the inevitable struggle with contact lenses as the disease progresses, and for those who continue to advance, the question of a potentially life-changing corneal transplant. The message we send, the virtual hug, is that this is doable. Sometimes it gets hard, but for most people, it's manageable most of the time. Thousands of us live fairly normal lives and work in a wide range of sectors despite our keratoconus. With a good contact lens fitter and corneal surgeons on side, you can generally get through the bad times. Now that's not just some positive thinking mantra. It's based on our lived experience, our own experiences. And what we do is not counselling in the strictest sense, but rather peer group support. Peer group support is today recognised as a powerful tool in healthcare. But in 2000, it was still frowned upon by many clinicians who saw the doctor-patient relationship as sacrosanct and were certainly not interested in a menage a trois with some unknown patient group. Of course, these days, we're all in a foursome along with Dr. Google. So what about the mythical beast known as the keratoconic personality? A survey of the research literature shows belief in the concept is widespread, but that it's also total fiction. Keratoconus patients behave no differently from any other group affected by early onset vision loss. After all, sight is the most precious of our senses. Dr. Kandel's landmark study on the quality of life of keratoconus patients confirms this, but tells a more nuanced story. As he will explain in detail, analysis of SafeSight registry data shows that the impact of keratoconus on quality of life is disproportionate to measurable vision loss. So while patients may end up with good corrected visual acuity, their quality of vision may be poor. Yes, we may be able to distinguish letters well on an eye chart, but our vision is constantly being compromised by ghosting, halos, bright lights, and deteriorates significantly in poor light and at night, especially when driving and facing oncoming headlights. Also, our lenses may be comfortable in the optometrist rooms, but can become like razor blades in a dusty or air-conditioned environment, and short tolerable wearing times can make life a series of time management decisions, especially for many of us with eye allergies. Mark has given advice today on better managing these issues. Of course, we knew all this stuff long ago, but it's a relief to have a scientific study finally back us up. Science can take a long time to catch up with acquired wisdom. Like the misunderstood cactus, Keratoconus Australia has worked hard in other areas to show the world how beautiful we are, despite our sometimes prickly nature. We run a website full of clear information about the disease and its treatments, with answers to common questions and links to other useful resources on the internet. We have a Facebook page with bulletins on the latest research findings and other news from around the keratoconus world. And our members run a local Facebook discussion forum. We also distribute booklets on keratoconus and corneal transplantation and brochures on crosslinking and on the dangers of eye rubbing. We hold public information seminars like KeraClub, operate a helpline through our website for patients and their families, and offer outreach support. Patients can have their questions answered by the association by a group of committed optometrists and corneal surgeons. We also support tissue donation for corneal transplantation and promote public health messaging on the dangers of eye rubbing, the only patient controllable factor in keratoconus progression. Quality of life issues often arise as many patients rely too long on their local eye carer who may have little experience with keratoconus. As a result, many patients are misdiagnosed, misinformed, mistreated, and living in the mistaken belief that little or nothing can be done to restore their failing vision. From the outset, we recognise that helping patients find an experienced clinician can be life-changing. We use a range of resources to direct them to the closest of these to avoid excessive travel. We've also been working with optometrists to improve training in contact lens fitting for keratoconus. Since 2006, we've collaborated with the optometry faculty at Melbourne University to run special lectures for optometry students on keratoconus and to operate a keratoconus clinic that gives students hands-on experience with fitting patients with lenses while offering bulk billing and other discounts to patients, a win-win outcome. More young optometrists are now taking an interest in managing keratoconus patients, and as their profession evolves, they'll come to understand that their own future will involve greater specialisation in areas like keratoconus. We've also supported a range of research projects across Australia, including genetic studies of keratoconus, the world's first randomised study of crosslinking here in Melbourne, the development of a quality of life survey in Adelaide designed specifically for keratoconus patients, which is now being used by Dr. Kandel as part of the SafeSight registry project. We provided seed funding for that registry, a world first in keratoconus. Registry data was decisive in having crosslinking included in the Medicare benefit schedule in 2018, thus making this crucial but costly procedure finally accessible to thousands of Australia diagnosed with the disease. Our relationship with researchers also helps shape the direction of projects to ensure they remain relevant to keratoconus patients. The high and rising cost of advanced contact lenses is creating new areas of disadvantage within the keratoconus community. Centre of Eye Research Australia data showed last year that people with keratoconus spend some 30 times more than the average Australian on their eye care. In our role as advocates, we have sought to have keratoconus recognised separately under the Medicare to metric scheme and have contact lenses for keratoconus treated as a medical device and be included on the Medicare schedule. To no avail so far, but with support from optometrists, maybe we can succeed one day. COVID-19 resulted in added stress for many patients, especially those prevented from seeking timely crosslinking treatments for progressive keratoconus due to lockdowns. We took on board the feedback on these mental health issues and sought help from Vision 2020 Australia. We were stunned to discover there are currently no vision-specific mental health supports in Australia. Thanks to our efforts, Vision 2020 Australia has created a working party in this space, chaired by our Vice President, Greg Harper, and good progress is now being made towards the creation of a sector-wide mental health support network. But perhaps our greatest contribution is simply to exist, to have put keratoconus on the map in Australia, and to provide a patient-centric resource for a wide range of people touched by keratoconus when previously there was none. So what does the future hold? There are many challenges ahead for the community, not the least being the rising cost of treatments, especially new larger contact lenses, the need for improved warranties and refund policies on these lenses, and a lack of access to public funded treatment centres. We must avoid creating a new disadvantaged class among patients who previously could afford their treatments. Funding remains elusive for critical research projects into the futuristic technologies discussed tonight, artificial intelligence, new cheaper contact lenses, and gene therapies that could ultimately provide a cure for keratoconus. The association now is at the crossroads. Keratoconus is a young person's disease, and we need an injection of youth, people committed and keen to put their own stamp on the future direction of the association. We need new campaigns, new strategies, and more volunteers able to use the new technologies to bring our message to government, health carers, and patients and their families. Perhaps we need to expand, become more corporatised, establish regular funding streams, take on paid staff, and move away from the volunteer model to achieve our objectives. Otherwise, we too may be absorbed into a larger vision organisation and lose our independence or become an appendage of a hospital or research centre and trotted out as a marketing exercise to justify a new funding application. Personally, that would make me sad and even more prickly. So there's much to be done. If you're prepared to invest your time, energy, and expertise to help, then please contact us soon. We can be reached at info@keratoconus.org.au. And no matter how prickly you're feeling, you're always welcome to get in touch just for a virtual hug. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. That was an excellent presentation again. Now, I'd just like to take a few minutes in the program just to really thank Larry for his involvement over the years. Firstly, with the KeraClub. He's also been there from the beginning and has really been an integral part of not only being here as the presenter, but reaching out to the keratoconus community to get their involvement. But Larry's also, in his role as president of Keratoconus Australia, really does more than most people might know. He's there engaging with patients, engaging with other people with keratoconus, really advocating for keratoconus, working with Vision 2020. And he's always there bringing up the point of view of the patient with keratoconus. And for us as clinicians and researchers, that's really been invaluable. Larry has supported the Safe Site Keratoconus Registry from its inception, and it's really a world first program. It's the only resource in the world available for clinicians to actually track their outcomes of patients with keratoconus, so they can see how you're going and how your treatments are. Now, there's also, with that, the registry, there's also the opportunities for patients to see their treatment journeys, and that's very unique too. Now, the registry research has also reached the world stage. So through Larry's support, we've been able to bring our Australian data and join it with world data. And with that, we're able to really show that Australians can do great research and that we can find out new and novel things about keratoconus, which will help us treat it better in the future. And lastly, it's just really been an honour knowing Larry, and we had hoped to be live there tonight to present Larry with a small token of appreciation for all his help and assistance and guidance and knowledge. Without having direct contacts with people like Larry, and particularly Larry, to understand patients with keratoconus and their needs, as clinicians and researchers, we lack a crucial direction for where we need to focus. So I'd just like to put a virtual round of applause together for Larry. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's very kind.
Thank you.
I'd now like to move on in our speakers for tonight, and also acknowledge the amazing contribution that that Larry makes as well, as I said in the introduction. But like Larry, we also have another patient to speak to us tonight. Justine McLaughlin was diagnosed with keratoconus in her late teens and managed it through glasses and hard contacts until an emergency corneal transplant in 2005. She's since had another 2 corneal grafts, including one just a year ago. She's passionate about the importance corneal tissue donation plays in improving keratoconus patients' lives. She qualified as a solicitor and has spent the last decade in New South Wales local government as an elected councillor and deputy mayor. She's currently a committee member of Keratoconus Australia. Welcome, Justine.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and hi everyone. I'm coming to you from my home tonight, I'm not in front of the KeraClub logo, unfortunately, but I am a patient, so I think that's probably appropriate. It is a little surreal to be here talking to you tonight about my perspective as a patient, because when I was diagnosed in my late teens, I didn't really think much about the potential for the severity of keratoconus. I could barely pronounce it, to be honest, let alone understand the impact that it would have throughout my life. As a child, you see, I'd always been a chronic eye rubber. And if I'm honest, I sometimes still can be. I always had itchy eyes. I must have had bad allergies, but I don't remember being given antihistamines or eye drops or being told that what I was doing could be harmful. I never visited an optometrist growing up in my small country town. I would simply rub and rub and rub, and it was so soothing and such a relief. And while I'm sure many of you are cringing, there's many more of you who would be nodding. But I'm here to tell you, don't do it. With no obvious hereditary background, I'm convinced that this is what caused my keratoconus, and that it was actually me who contributed to the damage caused to my corneas. But as a young adult, I got on, I got my glasses, and I was studying and I was working, and I didn't think much about how the condition might worsen. I followed the well-worn path that we've all been down about getting hard contacts when my eyesight worsened. And I wore these for quite a long time, quite successfully, actually. But as you know, your cornea is quite literally your window on the world, and mine was becoming steeper and steeper. It wasn't until I experienced a sudden failure of my left cornea and needed almost immediate surgery that I started to understand that this condition wasn't something to be sniffed at. Many years ago, you were put on a wait list for a graft, much like any other organ donation. But because my cornea was in such a bad way, I needed to go to the top of that list. So this disease for me had become pretty serious. At the time, a full penetrating graft was the only option available, and I didn't question its necessity at all. And since then, I've had 2 more grafts, including a new graft just a year ago performed by Prof. Watson under after that original 16-year-old graft failed. And I've been lucky enough to have a pretty good run of good sight as a result of my grafts. A couple of years after my first transplant, I had some ICL lenses implanted, which worked brilliantly. And I was actually off the keratoconus merry-go-round for a good 10 years, really. In recent years, I've just had the normal age-related vision problems, and they've been corrected via glasses. And so I was able to continue to work as a local government councillor, and more recently as part of a campaign to elect a federal member to Parliament. And I'm happy to say that we won, so that was very exciting. But my eyes do get tired, and working on screens requires a lot of breaks. But I can still drive during the day, and that's always been my benchmark. But strangely, no one in my family ever wants to drive with me. I just don't understand that, but anyway. So while I've had pretty positive experiences, I know that many others haven't. Corneal grafts aren't for everybody, they're not suitable for everyone, and everyone's experience and medical advice will be different. But hopefully, with advancements in alternative treatments, and the cross-linking, etc., and some of the research and the treatments that we've heard about today, the necessity for grafts will lessen into the future. But for now, corneal tissue for grafts is much needed. Way back when I had my first graft, it was carefully explained to me that I was to receive tissue from someone who had chosen to donate their cornea after death. I was even told a little bit afterwards in very vague terms where my donation had come from. And this was when corneal tissue could only be retrieved and kept for a short period of time. These days, corneal tissue is banked and available for scheduled surgeries. The waiting list is minimal. And this provides more certainty for patients for planning and recovery around their lives and their families, and for the surgeons who are scheduling those surgeries. And the surgery itself and recovery is much more simple these days. But it is a common misconception by people around us that a graft will immediately restore our sight. And that is hard for some people to understand, but you've had a transplant, you must have excellent vision. Explaining the correcting of a cornea's shape and the process that follows to stabilise the vision literally makes their eyes glaze over. And the recovery process from surgery can be very costly. Having keratoconus in general, as Larry has pointed out, can be a huge financial burden, as many of you out there know only too well. I've had 3 different changes in lens prescriptions in my glasses since my surgery last year, as my vision continues to stabilise. Where every change requires updating lenses in glasses and sunglasses, it's just not financially sustainable for patients. My health fund stopped paying long ago, and I've actually been delaying whether to get my most updated prescription, as I know it will need some more tweaking moving forward. I'm lucky that I even have health insurance. It is the very real financial burden that may impact on whether patients decide to seek certain options for their condition. They simply can't afford it. And delaying treatment can mean patients may be too late to seek many of the early intervention options, and grafts should always be the last resort. So that's why I'm in awe as well of the work that Keratoconus Australia does, and particularly the work that Larry and Michelle and others do to help patients seeking support and going through financial hardship, and how they provide information and resources for patients and families struggling with options available to them. A lot of what I have learned about keratoconus, I learned from their website. Hopefully, many of you won't require corneal grafts as part of your journey. But from my perspective, they have absolutely changed the quality of my life. I'd like to shout it to the rooftops that I'm the recipient of 3 successful corneal tissue donations. and how important those donations were to me. But because my donations aren't considered as life-saving or important as organ donations, I sometimes feel even a little embarrassed to mention it. But it's just a piece of tissue. But it is a piece of tissue that does change someone's life. And ironically, these days, many more people are eligible to donate corneal tissue. This is because not all the restrictions that apply to organ donation apply to tissue donation. There is no age restriction, for example. And cornea donation can occur outside of hospital settings and up to 24 hours after death. And I mention all of this because last week was actually Donate Life Week, focusing on donation awareness in Australia. And there were many articles and interviews given over to the life-saving benefits of organ donation. But this is what people forget. Tissue donation is just as important to someone's quality of life as any other organ donation. Legal blindness is a debilitating condition. It is a disability. You won't die from it, but it leads to a much more diminished life. So I'd like to encourage everyone to get their friends and family to consider donation of corneal tissue. Where they think they may not qualify for organ donation, they may actually qualify for tissue donation instead. While advances in treatment and therapies is going great guns, corneal tissue for keratoconus will be needed for some time to come. I will need at least one more graft in my lifetime. So it can be an absolute game changer for those that need it. And speaking of games, this year, I've actually taken up golf, the game of golf. And I know it's one of the smallest balls you can hit, right? But look, and I'm absolutely rubbish at it, but more often than not, I can actually hit the ball off the tee. I have no idea where it ends up because I can't see that far, but I'm hopeful that when my sight stabilizes after this last graft, I might just be an average player. But I do wish I had been braver and more confident sooner. Don't let keratoconus stop you from at least trying things that you think your eyesight will hold you back from. But lastly, my final message is to please encourage your friends, family, and loved ones to donate corneal tissue. It is so important to so many. Thanks so much for listening, and I wish everyone all the luck in the world with their own keratoconus journey.
Justine, thank you so much for sharing your journey and also bringing up such an important topic, which I think should also be something that we are all very, very enthused about and will actually be inspired now to actually talk to our friends and family about that. It's something that I know is really not discussed enough. Thank you very much for sharing your journey. I know that's not always easy either. And now we'd like to introduce Himal Kandal, who has been such an incredible force with this KeraClub. He has been the Kornhauser Research Associate at the Safe Site Keratoconus Registry since January 2019, after completing his PhD at Flinders University in Adelaide. Here he was awarded the Vice-Chancellor's Prize for Doctoral Thesis Excellence and South Australian International Student of the Year Award. Dr. Kandal has published over 50 research papers in reputed journals and has a special interest in patient-reported outcomes research. His research seeks to answer real-world questions in keratoconus management using the world-first Safe Site Keratoconus Registry. Thank you, Himal.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everyone. So the Safe Site Keratoconus Registry has been extremely useful to understand important research questions in keratoconus, as highlighted by the talks by Stephanie and Larry. And these are some of the topics that we have published. And so far we have published 35 papers, 35 studies using the Safe Site Keratoconus Registry data, including 16 full-length research articles. And we have delivered 65 conference or invited presentations. And a significant proportion of the research we do at the registry is on quality of life. I will briefly describe the quality of life research at the registry. Many people with keratoconus have good visual acuity, but they cannot drive at night, and they are worried about their eye condition getting worse. And this highlights the importance of evaluating and improving quality of life. The first step of improving quality of life is measuring it correctly. And how do we do it? Can quality of life be measured? Yes, we are able to measure it using the questionnaires, validated questionnaires, which has a number of quality of life issues. And then we call them quality of life measures or patient-reported outcome measures as well. There are a number of advantages of adopting or using patient-reported outcome measures or the quality of life measures. I won't go into details of these advantages in the interest of the time today, but I will highlight some of them. You can see in this figure that this is a doctor here, and there is a patient here. Doctor thinks, okay, fantastic outcomes with these scleral lenses. You can now see 6x6 vision. But many things are going on in the patient with keratoconus. I can read letters, but they look distorted, and I see halos and ghosting around the light. The prescription is getting worse and worse. I'm scared that I might be blind one day, although the visual acuity may be good. Similarly, are these lenses going to help me with the glare and light sensitivity? Will I be able to drive at night? Will I be able to wear these lenses? My eyes are already so dry. Scleral lenses are expensive and my insurance does not cover them. People don't understand. Some say just wear glasses instead of contacts. Others say just go and get laser surgery. So many things are going on in patient's mind, and patient-reported outcome measures can reduce the gap between the patients and clinician perspectives. And often clinician usually sees the tip of the iceberg, and usually patients visit their clinicians or doctors when they have a lot of problems, and doctor will be able to see only some impact in some of the domains of quality of life. And again, patient-reported outcome measures or quality of life research can help to reduce this gap. But there are challenges in measuring quality of life. It is not straightforward. Measuring quality of life, love, or happiness is not straightforward like measuring length or weight or volume. There are challenges, but they do have to follow the same basic measurement principles, scientific principles. And we do that at the SafeSite registry. And another challenge in quality of life, evaluating quality of life, is that usually quality of life research has been focused for research settings only. The tools have been developed for research settings only because it is difficult to calculate the overall quality of life scores in the clinical settings. Doctors would have to use the calculator, or I don't know, they need time to do that. So it is often not possible. But now comes the importance of SafeSite Keratoconus registry, where actually you can see the bottom box here. This is the real data from a patient. In multiple visits, the scores, quality of life scores, are calculated automatically, and then doctors are able to compare how the patient is performing in terms of quality of life in different visits. So it is an extremely useful tool. In the SafeSite Keratoconus registry, we use 3 questionnaires to collect quality of life data: Keratoconus outcomes research questionnaire, impact of vision impairment questionnaire, and patient health questionnaire, which has recently been added to the registry. The first study that we did using the registry data with respect to quality of life was this one, to explore the vision-related quality of life in keratoconus. And the main finding from this study was that vision in the better eye had the strongest correlation with visual function. Vision in the worse eye was significantly correlated with emotional scores. So it is often understood that the better eye determines the visual function. That is not an unexpected result. But here we found that the worse eye can have significant impact on the quality of life. So it is important for the doctors to consider this as well when treating their patients. This study was done using the impact of vision impairment questionnaire, and it has 15 items or issues, and they are not very specific to keratoconus. That's just broad questions which are applicable to all eye conditions. So So next questionnaire we have in the registry, next patient-reported outcome measure is Keratoconus Outcome Research Questionnaire, which has issues specific to keratoconus, such as distorted vision, glare, light sensitivity. Those are really important issues for people with keratoconus. So this was developed by Professor Konrad Pesudovs and team in Flinders. At the time I was doing my PhD with, and our team developed this with detailed consultation with patients with the help of Keratoconus Australia. And this questionnaire has content on two important domains of quality of life: activity limitation and symptoms. And these are the main reasons why patients with keratoconus visit their doctors. So, in the registry, we use this, and we wanted to, the first study we did with the Coke, the questionnaire, this questionnaire was looking at whether we are getting meaningful data out of it, using it. It's really important, the information we are getting using the tool is allowing us to have like meaningful data and monitor quality of life. And we did this study to assess that using the modern psychometric methods, and we found that the questionnaire was the tool was behaving really well, and we were collecting meaningful data, and the findings suggested that we have to continue collecting data on quality of life using this tool. And we also conducted a systematic review. We analyzed all the information out there, which is available, looking at the quality of life impact of keratoconus. And from this review also, we found that the tools we have in the registry are of good quality. And we also, we found that there is a lot of confusion regarding using the tools, appropriate tools in terms when it comes to quality of life. And then we therefore made a guideline so that clinicians and researchers can appropriately select appropriate measures and find meaningful data. I mean, if the good tool is not used, they won't get good reliable results. So it's really important and this study actually has been it's been like about 2 years since it was published, and it has already been used by nearly 50 researchers worldwide. The other study, which was recently accepted for publication, we used the Coke questionnaire to look at what are the factors that that affect quality of life in keratoconus. And we found that female gender, young age, contact lens wear, reduced visual acuity, and higher disease severity were all associated with worse visual function and symptoms, or worse quality of life. And this improved our understanding of the impact of keratoconus and the ways to improve outcomes. And it also informs clinicians what to expect when they see keratoconus patients. The next paper, which was also recently accepted for publication, we looked at the patient-reported outcomes of corneal crosslinking. So there is a good amount of research which has looked clinical outcomes of crosslinking, but there is very limited research when it comes to patient-reported outcomes. And we did this study to look the patient-reported outcomes of corneal crosslinking. We were also invited to present this at the ARVO conference, which is the largest vision research organization globally. And in this study, we found that almost in every issues that is captured by Coke and IVI questionnaires, the two questionnaires that we use in the registry, there was improvement after corneal crosslinking. So this is not published yet, but I think this will be very good document which will establish that corneal crosslinking can actually result in improved quality of life. And this is, so far, this is the most comprehensive approach to evaluating patient-reported outcomes after crosslinking. The last paper, Larry also briefly highlighted about this paper. This is, so we have safe site registries and different modules, including Keratoconus registry. So Keratoconus registry is one of the modules of safe site registries, but impact of vision impairment questionnaire, the data is collected on this questionnaire in multiple registries. So what we did was we combined all the data on this questionnaire and now compared the quality of life impact of keratoconus with the quality of life impact of retinal disease. And we found that there was a low correlation of quality of life with visual acuity, meaning there is a need to measure patient's experience of the disease, not just visual acuity in keratoconus. And we found that keratoconus patients had a worse impact compared to retinal disease. This kind of studies is really important for advocacy purpose, because usually visual acuity is considered for prioritizing conditions or allocating funding. And this finding, this study findings are really important to highlight that it's not just vision that we should consider when policy making or when prioritizing or when allocating funding, but overall impact on quality of life needs to be considered, because most of the people with keratoconus may have good visual acuity, but they may have other many quality of life problems. But again, presenting all these results that we have published so far, it should be noted that one of the most important advantage of having registry in terms of quality of life perspective is that we are able to monitor individual quality of life in a better way. So if you look at the box here, the left one here, this is a real data from the patient, as I showed earlier. Now clinicians can look at like how this patient is doing in this quality of life domains, and when they click these scores, they can see the patient's responses as well. But on the right side is a graph. It is not yet in the registry, so this is a working plan. What we want to do is, like, for example, in this graph, just looking at this graph, in a glimpse, the doctor will be able to see, okay, the patient is having issues with RGP contact lenses in this one. So maybe the doctor has to refer the patient to the contact lens expert or optometrist. So we want to create more of this graph so that it will be more useful for the clinicians as well as for patients in the routine clinical practice. So this is the plan, but we obviously need to do a lot of software development work, and some funding would also be required for this one. The other things we are doing is, like, we have recently started collecting data on the mental health impact of keratoconus, which is very under-studied area. Also, we have some data now on eye rubbing and allergy, which is another under-studied area, and that are the next studies we'll be conducting. These are the references that I have used in today's talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Himal. That was very enlightening, and certainly showing what the quality of life data is going to do for patients and for clinicians alike. And I think it's such an important topic that needs, obviously, further investigation. And thank you for all of that work that you're doing. Our final talk today is Narina Janian. And Narina works in the advancement portfolio at the University of Sydney, where she engages with alumni and the broader community through a wide range of communications, events and engagement programs. She's responsible for working closely with people who wish to philanthropically support the SafeSight Institute's research and education initiatives. Welcome, Narina.
Thank you very much. So I'm sure you'll agree with me that the researchers that we've heard from today are dedicated individuals. They perform the day-to-day work required to generate significant health research outcomes. But we are seeing a dwindling in government support. We are seeing a brain drain in Australia as we lose talented researchers to overseas opportunities, or simply accepting defeat and changing their careers. At the university, we recognise that our researchers can spend up to 50% of their time trying to secure funding through grant applications, which has on average success rate of about 7 to 13%. So philanthropic funding is vital. Regular successful grants are crucial to academic careers to advance. Grants fund research. Research leads to publications. Publications result in growing credibility and ultimately changing policies, healthcare systems, and outcomes for those living with keratoconus and their loved ones. Secure long-term sources of funding ensure that we attract and retain the best minds. Clinical researchers can shape their research agenda based on the greatest need and the most immediate impact, rather than available funding. Vital research capability is built, and the next generation of leading scientists are supported in their early careers by current leaders in their field. So a fantastic example of this is Dr. Himmel Kendall and his position, supported so gratefully by Larry Kornhauser. So if you would like to discuss making a contribution to keratoconus research, I'd love to hear from you. My details are here displayed. And we also have created a QR code that you will be able to go straight to a donation page to support keratoconus research led by Professor Stephanie Watson. Thank you.
Now going to introduce Stephanie again, who will run a short discussion, question and answer discussion due to us going a little bit over time. So thank you very much to our wonderful panelists and all that they have done for keratoconus, for the patients who have been willing to share their stories, and for all the researchers and opticians and everybody that work alongside us.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you again for a wonderful job you've done hosting KeraClub. We are just going to take some brief questions, and we did receive some beforehand. And the first one I have is actually for Larry, and it's a question from somebody wanting to know what resources Keratoconus Australia might have for children at school or school-aged children.
Probably nothing specifically for school-aged children, but we do have booklets on keratoconus. We do have the brochure on crosslinking, and we do. We're more than happy to discuss with teaching staff or whoever needs to understand better keratoconus. I'm more than happy, or somebody else could chat to them about the particular problems that these people are may be experiencing. You know, in many ways, I think, Stephanie, you would understand this, that ultimately keratoconus is what you're dealing with is vision loss. And in terms of resources for people at school, I guess more general resources could be useful, you know, the ones that you find through Vision Australia, or perhaps Safe Sight Institute may have those sorts of resources to help in this case.
Yes, we do have some resources at Safe Sight Institute and a group of young people as well experiencing vision difficulties. Thank you. Himmel, we have a question here just wondering about how many clinicians or how many patients will have their sort of mental health status checked, you know, with the registry use, or how that's going to work.
Yeah, like keratoconus outcome research questionnaire or impact of vision impairment questionnaire, primary health questionnaire, which collects the mental health data, will also be used in the routine clinical practice. So it is for every visit. So most clinicians collect the patient reported outcome data in every visit. So it will also be like just like any other test, clinical test or other patient-reported outcome measures. These mental health data will also be collected routinely.
Thank you. And Yogi, thank you for your talk. It's fascinating to hear what's in store for the future. Do you see that the treatments will be able to sort of replace corneas or also repair, you know, corneas, or both?
The work that we are interested in is to look at how we can use these material cells and the protein molecules that can help in improving the health of these stem cells. Increase the scaling up of these stem cells is more important, because with your work, we saw that it is quite important and useful for the patients in terms of improving the health of the limbal stem cells. So we want to increase that using these scaffolds so that we can improve the health of these damaged limbal stem cell tissues.
Thank you. And Mark, we have a question here where somebody's asking, you know, what we can do to improve the vision in patients that have corneal grafts.
Well, contact lenses still are an option, Stephanie, even after a corneal graft. So a corneal graft is not a contraindication. So the things obviously are to try to maximize your vision with spectacle lenses or the various contact lens options. And many, I've got quite a few patients who had corneal grafts and are wearing miniscleral lenses. You know, the number one thing that we look for is we want to make sure that the graft going into wearing contacts is actually in good shape. We want to make sure it's clear and the endothelial cells are numerous. And if that's the case, then they should have a good response with regards to contact lenses.
Thank you. Thank you. And Michelle, you know, being a musician and having keratoconus, did that sort of, when you were trying to make career decisions, did that have impacts, or were you fairly determined to do what you needed to do?
It was a 16-year break from music, so I had to leave my bachelor course early, and it wasn't until after the third graft was a success that I managed to be able to read the music in a way that was possible. So I furthered my education at that stage, had a career for 10 years, and decided that now was the time, if any. You know, my grafts are getting older. And I just thought, if I don't do this now, I may never get the opportunity to do it. So that's why I went over to the Netherlands and just finished my master's course. It gives you a huge focus and determination to finish something that you see was unfinished and such a passion. And I was very fortunate to be able to do it, because I know that's not always you know, possible for people, and I was very lucky with the outcomes. So been very grateful, especially to my donors, who, you know, obviously I don't know who they are, but through their eyes I've been able to pursue something that is incredibly meaningful.
Oh, thank you. And Narina, you know, in your area, there's a sort of the research that benefits, but also supporting researchers and researchers' careers. Do you find? Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. That's correct. Sorry, that just made me quite emotional, Michelle. That's really beautiful to hear that. Yeah, so yes, it's to support, you know, that philanthropic support will support researchers in their careers, just like we have with Himmel. It's vital for success of research outcomes.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll finish with Justine and sort of who's, you know, achieved a lot and had a lot, you know, gone through a lot with the keratoconus, but, you know, has had a very successful career, and her talk, I got a feeling of hope. Perhaps you'd just like to say some words to some of the younger members here that might be on tonight about their, you know, their future and success.
Well, you know, it is a really long journey, and I as I said, I had trouble pronouncing it, so therefore I kind of just dismissed it for a long time. But you know, I guess the biggest message would be just persevere. You can achieve a lot, as Michelle is. She's a perfect example of this. You can achieve a lot just by persevering. And I know that I think Larry mentioned as well, that you really need to. Sometimes it can be hard, but you've just got to keep going. And I'm absolutely certain that with all of the treatments and all of the resources that are coming out, the life of a keratoconus patient is going to become easier. And hopefully for young people, they will see the benefit of all of this research that you've heard about tonight and all of the treatments that are coming on board. And I think your journey will be a smooth and happy one, because of all of the research that is going into keratoconus. We've seen it tonight. It's absolutely fabulous. And, you know, I think the future is hopeful for keratoconus patients, and particularly young ones, because you are going to be at the forefront of what is happening in this field. So I wish everybody so much luck with their journey.
Thank you. Look, that's lovely words. And that's why we're really trying to focus, finding out about the quality of life and patient-reported outcomes, with our research so we can deliver better outcomes for you all. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And please keep in touch and all the best. Thank you again. And thank you to all the speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Bye.
Thank you.